phrase men's rights, what comes to mind?
Aggression.
Advocating for the human rights of man as a class.
I start laughing.
Do you think men are important? Like for what?
So men will completely disappear one day. Yes, in precisely 4.6 million years, men as we know it will cease to exist.
Wait, but without men, how will we continue the human race?
Women actually have sperm cells in their bone marrow, so we don't even need men to reproduce.
Men are needed. This is one of the few phrases the feminist movement has uttered in the last few decades. And while this isn't true, just hearing modern women suggest that men aren't needed has caused men in society to reflect on their own place within it. And something had become painfully clear to so many of us. Throughout history, men have been disposable. Feminism has gaslit modern society into believing a view of history that sees women as oppressed victims. And it's done so while ignoring the contributions and sacrifice of men since the dawn of time. Men have been disposable in ways that I'm going to get into later in the video. And we've been content with that as long as we've had respect, gratitude, and appreciation for the sacrifices we've made. But in recent decades, feminism has created a generation of women who actively disrespect and underappreciate men. Feminism and modern women have driven men too far with their entitlement, lack of gratitude, and bitterness. And now, they're walking away in massive numbers, leaving women to handle life on their own, with disastrous consequences. In this video, I'm going to talk about the concept of male disposability, and how society has been screwing men over for generations for the benefit of women. Despite what feminism teaches, it's always been men, not women, who have suffered the most. And this is one of the many reasons why men are walking away from a society that doesn't respect or appreciate them. But before we go any further, let me share the comment of the day. Shout out to CDR Chaos, who said, "Imagine wearing revealing clothing so tightly that it leaves nothing to the imagination while you strike revealing poses in public and then act surprised when people take notice. Ain't this the truest thing?" So please, don't forget to reach out to us by email to claim your $5. As usual guys, I'll pick one comment from each video. It may be the funniest, the most liked, or one that touched me, so don't forget to leave a comment and you may be our next winner. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons too, as it helps a lot. Now, back to the video.
Embrace your masculinity.
So what is male disposability? Male disposability has been around since the dawn of time. Here's what it boils down to. When it comes to the well-being of others, men come last. This is how it's always been. It's policy that men give up their seats in a lifeboat. Men get saved last in a burning building. Men have always eaten last. Society puts men at the back of the queue every time, and society expects men to do it voluntarily. Women and children first, men last. Save the women and children, men stay and die. The recent war in Ukraine was a fresh reminder that the recent Western feminist push for equality means absolutely nothing. Because when Russia invaded, women and children were shipped to safety while men were barred from leaving the country, given a rifle, and shipped to the front lines. Feminism exists until the war starts, and suddenly, modern women suddenly want to be damsels in distress again. There's a 93% workplace death gap. That means that 93% of people who die in the workplace are men, and nobody in society has any interest in changing it at all, especially not the feminists, who are apparently so interested in equality. In fact, there was a small increase in workplace injuries for females a few years ago, and the narrative of the articles was that it was a huge problem that needed solving. But apparently, the men dying 20 times the rate of women was just business as usual. Prioritizing the safety of women and children was necessary when humans were still living in caves. This attitude was necessary for human survival. Life was dangerous. Human tribes were small, and if one big disaster killed all the women, that entire tribe would die out. One thing you'll hear from the feminists is that women have always been oppressed and undervalued, while men and masculinity have been praised, rewarded, and preferred. But when you remove all the gaslighting from the equation, you see that the truth is actually the exact opposite. Women have always been seen as the most valuable gender because women have always been limited in their reproductive ability. When it comes to making babies, every single woman counts, whereas one single very happy man could populate an entire tribe if he needed to. Women have been the most valued gender for as long as humans have been around, and for toxic feminism to suggest otherwise is completely wrong. Another ridiculous and ungrateful idea that toxic feminism preaches is that this drive to protect women historically comes from oppression and a lack of respect for women. The word ungrateful isn't a big enough word. It's like if you saved a woman's life, but then she calls the police on you and reports you for sexual assault because you touched her without consent.
And ungrateful, among other things.
Who's ungrateful, sorry, in that? Who is being ungrateful?
Look at what you have.
Right.
You live in the best society that's ever been created. You know, I was reading about some Indonesians.
I mean, do you mean me as a woman or me as a
I mean
21st
us.
century person in the world?
I mean us, yeah.
I mean, I'm incredibly grateful for what I have, but to me the
Then how
project
is
of
it
politics
a
is...
construction of a tyrannical patriarchy? You're grateful for the productions of a tyrannical patriarchy. How does that make sense?
Because I think life is good, I think it could be better.
That's
what being a
fine.
progressive
That's a perfectly
means.
reasonable proposition.
But I guess
But that isn't commensurate with your claim that you're the beneficiary of a tyrannical patriarchy.
Why not?
How can it be good if it's the consequence of a tyrannical patriarchy? Tyranny isn't good, is it? I mean, that's the definition of tyranny. Something that isn't good. And yet it's produced all these things that you're grateful for. Like, doesn't that contradiction bother you? Where did what was good come from?
Another society-wide preference for women is in health funding. Health issues that primarily affect women receive more funding and attention compared to men's health issues. For example, breast cancer research receives way more funding than prostate cancer. And the feminists will say that these diseases aren't the same, but they have the same rates of incidence. There's no good reason for this and no explanation other than a society-wide bias towards women.
We need to stop pretending that women need a man or XYZ. It's like, no, back yourself.
We do need men, though. We do.
We don't need them.
We do.
No, because they're lesbians.
Who do you call to get your car fixed? A man or a woman? Your toilet breaks down. Who do you call?
So I fix my own car.
Power supply. Who runs it? Who runs the infrastructure of society? Men or women?
Oh, at the moment, men, obviously.
Yeah. So regardless of that, like, you agree that men run the infrastructure. So therefore,
at the moment, men run the world.
So we need men.
On a wider scale, yes. On a wider scale. On a personal scale, no. Because you don't need a man to provide for you.
Right.
You can earn our own wage.
But we need men to run the industries that keep us alive and well.
Not necessarily, no. Because I know female mechanics, engineers, carpenters.
But remember, that's exception. Like, those industries are like 99% male.
If feminists cared about equality as much as they cared about female supremacy, there'd be protests outside of the courthouse to oppose a few burning issues. One is that studies have shown that men receive harsher sentences than women for the exact same crimes. This isn't some easily explainable inequality like the pay gap. This is a real, hard bias against men. And the media never talks about it. In family courts, women are more likely to be awarded custody of children. Why? Probably because society sees men as expendable and completely downplays the role of fathers, even though the research proves how disastrous a fatherless home is for a child. This society only seems to care about an issue when it starts impacting women. The pain of men is seen as a statistic and a part of life, when a woman's pain is considered a tragedy. The vast majority of people living on the streets are men. Male homelessness is almost never talked about in the media or brought up in political policy. But female homelessness is seen as a terrible issue that people are pouring money into solving while men freeze to death on the streets of a country that couldn't care less about them. The whole girl boss movement has led to an education system that favors women tremendously. Scholar and author Richard Reeves talks about this situation in his book Of Boys and Men, which shows how the current education system has been warped to favor women at the expense of boys. But because women are favored in today's society, nobody cares. Women succeeding and beating men in a rigged game is seen as a huge victory. The gynocracy has succeeded in favoring women while convincing everyone they are oppressed victims of men, while still being strong and independent. It's impossible to believe that women have been oppressed when you look at the situation honestly. Seriously, even today in 2023, we still fully expect that if push came to shove, men should give up their lives to let a woman live. And it doesn't matter how valuable he is, he's expected to sacrifice for a woman. That's the equation. One life is more valuable than another, and the woman wins every time. There's no argument that society values women more than men. Society values women just for existing. Society only values men for what they do and provide. Our society reduces men from human beings to human doings. Your value as a man is directly related to how much you can provide and contribute to women and children. That's how society views it. And for women to turn around and complain about being oppressed is nothing more than toxic entitlement. Here's an example of how deeply our society values women more than men. Studies have shown that even though baby boys tend to cry and fuss more than baby girls, parents are quicker to attend to a baby girl than they are a baby boy. They're both babies, but it doesn't matter. And on the topic of babies, our society completely accepts male circumcision in our culture, but banned female genital mutilation as soon as it was discovered. This says a lot about how we treat men and women differently. We expect baby boys to just suck it up and deal with it, whereas when we attend to baby girls, we're teaching them that it's safe to ask for help and that their needs are important. We're teaching girls that they can rely on people and that it's expected that someone is going to be there to look after them. And what are we teaching baby boys when we leave them to cry? We're teaching them to never have to depend on anyone, to suck it up, be stoic, and to deal with their emotions on their own. This is a way of conditioning that baby to one day be ready to sacrifice his own life for the women and the children of the tribe. We are really teaching him to internalize his own disposability. And baby girls, by attending to her crying so quickly, we're preparing her for the day she has to think of her own safety first and let the man sacrifice himself. We're training her to not allow guilt or empathy or acknowledgement of a man's humanity. We're training her to resist giving up her seat on the lifeboat to him. And that's because for millennia, the human species has absolutely depended on that woman being able to let the man sacrifice himself. And that brings me to feminism. Feminism talks about how equality is its main goal. This is completely bogus, but feminists are convinced of their own delusion. If feminism really gave a shit about equality, it would be working hard to reverse the traditional role of the disposable male. But feminism has done the exact opposite. In fact, feminism has reinforced the idea that society still owes women provision, protection, and help just because they're women. It dismisses male victims of domestic violence, which completely demonstrates how they have no interest in equality in the slightest. Feminism teaches us to put women's needs at the forefront of every single issue. Political or social, domestic violence law, sexual assault law, institutional sexism, social safety net, education funding, homeless shelters, you name it. Feminists are aggressively pushing their way to the front of the line to get the lion's share of all the good stuff in society. Selective equality means women can be treated as superior citizens, even if women don't need or deserve it. Society will give food to 1,000 rich women before it gives it to a single starving man.
I love men. I think men are the coolest, but I don't need them to survive.
You do actually need men to survive, and here's why. Everything that you see around you was built and created and maintained by men.
Okay.
Everything. The infrastructure in this country, in every single country in the world, is built, created, and maintained by good, honest, hardworking men that just want to provide for their family. Everything, the roads you drive on, the buildings you live in.
Feminism has done nothing but exploit this dynamic of the expectation on men to put everybody else before themselves, especially women. Women's safety and support, women's well-being, and women's emotional needs always come first. This is the most stunning piece of society-wide manipulative psychology I have ever come across. We made our way as humans through a really harsh history, and we became the dominant force on this planet. And one of the reasons we were so successful is because we have consistently put women's basic needs first, their need for safety, support, and provision. But modern women have fumbled the bag. They had a good thing going on, but by attacking men and claiming that they weren't needed, they drove men away. They scored the biggest own goal in history because their games and tricks were discovered. And now men aren't willing to continue that same sacrifice for a generation of women who hate them. Since the dawn of time, men have sacrificed because it's what was expected of us for the good of the human race. We knew our place. Maleness, manhood, and masculinity used to be celebrated and admired. It also used to be rewarded because it was 100% necessary and the personal cost to men was extremely high. Men often gave their lives for their family, and tens of millions of men gave their lives for their countries. But now, we still expect men to put women first. We still expect society to put women first, and we still expect men to be happy about coming in last in every single way. But men don't even get the admiration of women anymore. All men ever hear about is how oppressive, toxic, and shameful they are. And these women then go on social media complaining about men refusing to date or commit to them. Is there any wonder why men are checking out of society? There isn't any wonder. Men have woken up to the truth of their own disposability. We're pissed off for very good reasons. We had no problem sacrificing our own personal happiness for the good of our families and our society. There was honor in it. We learned to suffer well, and this defined masculinity for generations. But when feminists took over and attacked men, that's when they screwed up. And now, men are walking away from Western women altogether, pursuing hobbies, building their finances, traveling the world, or going overseas to find women who appreciate them. And soon, these women will realize how much of the natural order they have destroyed to further their own delusional anti-male worldview. Sit back and watch. I hope you've got your popcorn. As always, I wish you tremendous success. Now it's your turn. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Remember that if you leave the best comment, you'll get $5. Thank you so much for watching. If you found value in this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons, ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on future uploads, drop a comment, and share it. See you in the next video. Till next time.